Hello and welcome to the Men's Lifeline Academy podcast. On this podcast, we help men live the best lives possible by being scholars of life, always looking for life and how they can improve their lives through studying, learning, and especially learning from the past mistakes. And that's where the past can be a benefit is when we actually take time to learn from it, study it, and so that way we're less likely to make mistakes. And today, I got Ben Black in the house, all the way from New Zealand. One of the few guests we've had that have been across seas, across the lands. And this is what's awesome about this platform, bringing people together. And I'll be your host. My name is Zach Goodman. And today, again, we have Ben Black. So, Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate you having me on, man. You've definitely rehearsed that that intro speech, that's for sure.
Actually, no, I haven't. I just do original every single time.
Wow, man. That's impressive. You got a better. You're doing a better job than I am. Typically have like a script, and I still mess it up even then.
Well, Ben, just glad to have you. I know that you really have a heart and passion for helping men and really helping families be strengthened, come back together. So that way, if we put the family first, we can change the future. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ben Black. I live in New Zealand, like you said. I've got a family of 5, soon to be 6, depending on how you cut it. Already 6 in my opinion, but keeps the explanation clear that way. Yeah, we have 10-acre homestead here in rural Canterbury. It's like one of my passions is building something for my children, and the homestead is a form of that. But yeah, I write a lot on X about Dynasty and building strong families, and kind of stepping up as a patriarch to lead your family well, not only now, but for generations to come. Because the actions that we take now affect generations of our families, no matter what we do. So we may as well make the right choices and make good, have a positive impact.
Yeah, and how did that passion develop for you even begin to go on X and everything like that? Because that's a big step to go on a social media platform and really put yourself out there. That's not simple or easy.
No, I think a lot of people don't understand the challenges that come along with it, and they're welcome challenges. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's definitely a lot more work than people put on, or believe rather. But in terms of where it came from, a bit of a long story, and I know we've got a bit of time here, so I'll go through a bit of a background.
Yeah,
So
take your time.
I grew up in an ordinary family, nothing spectacular, nothing too out there, but when I always had like a kind of feeling in the back of my head like I wanted to do something bigger. I've been a big fan of fantasy since I was, how yeah, probably about 5 I started to like fantasy stuff. And in that, there's always this running underlying current, not always, but a lot of the times this running underlying current of like noble houses and people wanting to build bigger things. It's grand fantasy, grand, adventures and stuff like that. And I always had that feeling in the back of my head. So when I finished school, I actually left high school early and went on to an electrical apprenticeship. Went through my apprenticeship fine, did pretty well. Started to build my own client book, but got an offer to do a lot of work for a particular guy. And he was pretty hard boss, but he paid very well, so I was willing to put up with it. And I used that to put a really good financial base under me. So I would basically just work as many hours as possible every week until I had enough money to buy a house, and then I'd buy a house or put a down payment on a house, not buy a house outright. It wasn't that. I don't make that much money as an electrician, but so I used that and sort of set myself up, and then had and when I say I worked a lot of hours, I'm talking like 80, 90 plus, and then
Wow,
kind of burned myself out. Yeah, my record was I think 100. I think it's either 114 or 119. I forget now, but it's one of the two. That was like how many hours I worked. It was unhealthy. All right, I don't condone this by any stretch of the imagination, but it did serve me well. I will say that. And so I actually left that line of work or that job in 2015, I believe, or 2014, 2015, around there. And I thought that I wanted to like do I don't know if you know what lean fire is, but like basically retire and live like a miser. So lean fire is like FIRE is fiscal independence or financial independence, retire early. Lean fire is like the light version of that. So just like, live like a poor man, basically. And I thought that's what I wanted to do. So I was living with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, and we lived very, very frugally. And I actually got really depressed during that period. Wasn't really building anything or making anything. I was just mucking around. I was basically a grown boy at that point. And I found myself getting very unhappy from that. So I wound up starting up a couple other businesses, a few different things. We can get into them if you like a little later. But ultimately, I wound up building up my electrical business, and I grew it quite a bit. Reasonably good work-life balance. But when we found out that my wife was pregnant with my daughter, my entire mindset shifted. Suddenly I wasn't just living for me, wasn't just trying to serve myself and my wife. It was me living for a family now. And it just completely changed my perspective on the world. And oddly enough, I was reading Dune at the time, or reading, audio booking. Okay, I was audio booking Dune, and interestingly, this, and we can touch on this as well if you like. A combination of
Yeah.
that and a couple other things kind of led me more into Christianity. But on the side of that, it also showed me that you can work towards bigger things. And this is coming all the way back into that fantasy mentality. So
Hmm.
when I started to see, we can build bigger things, I was thinking, well, I've done all this work and sacrificed so much of my youth and gone through all this hard work to build this asset base. I don't really want it to just be for me anymore. I want to build something like an empire for my children to inherit. And that's really where that first dynastic mindset came into play. And as I started reading a whole bunch of parenting books, I'd already done the whole read a billion personal finance books. So I was good on that front. But I started reading books about, old money families, how people have set up, their children to and run their families in terms of inheritance and stuff like that. Because there's like a cycle that families go through. The father builds, the son buys, his son sells, and his son begs, and it's like a never-ending cycle. But there's a way to break that, and just through research and asking people, a lot of my clients as well, who have built successful businesses that their children are coming into or run now. Just by asking them, I've worked out a lot of what it takes to do that for my family, and now I'm hoping to teach other families to do the same. So, a bit of a background for me. And from there, actually, from when I had the electrical business, I actually walked away from that during a particular period in history that you've asked me not to get into too much. So we moved on from that business, and I moved to rural Canterbury. Then we used to live in big city here, big city relative to New Zealand, all right, not that big, but big city for New Zealand.
Hmm.
And we moved to rural Canterbury, bought our 10-acre homestead, mortgage free, and now I work on Dynastic. I have another e-commerce business on the side, and I spend a lot of time with my kids and focusing on building my family and making sure that they're coming, my children are being brought up in the right way. So that's a history of me and where my where my mentality around dynastic mindset comes from.
No, I love it. I love how you kind of started for yourself, and then you started thinking bigger, especially when you go back to 5-year-old you being enthralled in fantasy and dynasties and everything else, and now taking it to the next level of reading the books, talking to people, and finding out what they've done to keep it alive. Because something you can spend your whole life building could be really gone in a generation. So really building that legacy and keeping that up. How are you installing that in your children, especially with having another one on the way? And got a lot
Well,
of kids, which is
Well, I don't
pretty
think
cool
it's a
to
lot.
hear.
Like for me, we're going from an era where I see it as a small family to a medium or large size family, depending on how you cut it. So it's quite a transitional period for us. A lot of the world feels like it's built around the 3-kid maximum. I think cars are a good example of this. We have cars that have 3 back seats, and that's it. But really, the world historically, like if you look at the way the world has been for a longer period of time than the modern period, we have valued having larger families. Have been a net benefit. And the way I like to cut it up is there are 4 kinds of capital that matter to a family if you want to build dynastic wealth. And they are in order of importance. There's human, intellectual, social, and financial. And you need to work on all 4 of these in order if you want to make your family last. So, one of the things that I focus on primarily is making sure that I am building a strong culture, I'm building a strong connection with my kids. And the other thing is when you take a dynastic mindset, when you do have more children, it actually means you have a greater net potential for your family. Because every child, they're their own person, they have their own interests, they have their own skills, but perhaps, maybe more importantly, they have their own time. And when you're all working towards a collective goal, well, obviously you have your own ambitions as well as a person, but if you're working towards a collective goal of the family, every person that you have in your family is another lifetime or lifespan that could be contributed towards that common goal. So as long as you're focusing on that culture and that unity first, uh, every family member that you add just expands the potential that your family has in the future as well. So I don't personally view it as a large family. I view it as we're increasing the potential of our dynasty in the long run.
Okay. So did you yourself come from a large like just for having gonna have what?
3 kids. Three
Yeah.
kids. I have 2 sisters.
Okay. relatively sized family. So for you, it's not that big. For someone else, it could be like, that's a lot. But again,
Actually,
you said you
yes.
had a 10-acre land though, so that kind of helps with. So do you like grow your own food and have like your own like livestock then?
Yeah, so we have a flock of sheep, we've got chickens, we've got a vegetable garden, and we're building a food forest. Maybe I can supply you with some. I don't know if you want to put B-roll over this, but I can supply you with some B-roll if you like. But yeah, we have um, few things that we're doing. It's all a work in progress, but when you have the dynastic mindset, you have a long span of time in which to achieve goals. So for me, building the food forest, we're planting trees now that are probably not going to fruit, or like for the interested in the nut trees at least, for a very long time. We'll get a
Mm-hmm.
few here and there, but until you get a significant harvest, it's going to be my children that benefit the most from that. So things that we set up, I have that long term view on, including setting up the personal brand that I have, building businesses, the investments that I take, and it's kind of reassuring in a way, I suppose, when you have that long term view, because suddenly the need to draw on the funds that you're building aren't as important, because you're working towards building these family assets. I like to frame everything around that family mindset. So the investments I make aren't for me, they're for my retirement, they're a family treasury. I don't actually ever plan to retire. I just want to keep building more and more and more. And maybe when I'm old, I'll help my children with their businesses or their career or their kids. But retirement, not on the cards for me. It doesn't interest me, despite the fact that I thought I wanted it when I was younger. Perhaps that's what I needed to realize that that isn't really a very productive or fruitful end goal. So, yeah, that's kind of like my mentality around the long game, anyway.
Well, it's kind of interesting. That's how your mindset shifted because in your early days, you're like, I'm just gonna live like basically like a hermit. I'm gonna just work all these crazy hours, and then like you said, I'm gonna live like a poor man.
Yeah.
To now, it's like, you know what? I'm not gonna retire. So what kind of like sparked that? Is it again just like with that whole family wanting that longevity of building your family? Is that kind of what brought up that kind of
I think it's
shifted
a
mindset?
combination. I think it's a combination, because I had the taste, and I realized it wasn't for me. Like, I worked the big hours because I liked working. I like seeing an end result. I like creating things. I like working towards an end goal. And one of the job, like basically had three jobs ish kind of. Like, I worked for a guy, he subbed me to somebody else, and then I was trying to build my own business on the side. And I worked with my dad for a long time on that. So it was like a three pronged approach that I had. But I think it was more the burnout side that made me want to try and just give it all up and and sit on my butt all day, which wasn't good. Like, I wasn't necessarily seeing, like, I still gardened and did a few bits and pieces, but it just wasn't an enjoyable time. It wasn't as enjoyable as I thought it would be. It's just, it didn't have that. I didn't have a purpose, and every man needs a purpose. And for me, that purpose came from having a family. But prior to that, um, I started building up businesses before we conceived my daughter, who's my oldest. Yeah, it was in terms of your question. I think it's just a combination of things, really. It wasn't any one event. It was just things that led up to that, and maybe it was just a combination of circumstances, or maybe it's just something that's always been in the back of my head. But yeah, it's yeah. Does that answer your question?
No, it does, and that's kind of about life, and that's what's kind of being used to teach people. Because the most common thing I'll get asked is like, "What's like the one thing that I can do to change my life? What's like the one thing, almost like what's like the magic pill, right?" And then so everyone's like looking for this, where did my life go wrong? And they're always looking for this like this one event. So that's a really good answer because it's looking at things as a multi-dimensional kind of view. That it's never
Yeah,
just one
exactly.
thing; it's always a combination. And then so, what kind of led you now to like want to kind of help men out? Like, would you see that need come about?
Well, from a selfish perspective, it was something that I just really enjoy doing, and I really enjoy seeing guys succeed. So that's, like, for me, I find it very rewarding. Like, I like to see men do serve their families well. I like to see men just achieve things and put their families in better positions. It's been very rewarding to see in my work, um, and also I just like the research side of it. I like the learning new things. I like putting my ideas out there. And then, when you get good feedback or opportunities, like, the ability to come on and chat with you today, it's there's something that I just find, I don't know, deeply satisfying, I think. And I wish more men had the opportunity to pursue things that were satisfying. And really, that to me is all putting it through a framework of what we do for our families. So for me, I'm building things for my family, and I find that to be satisfying in and of itself. Even when I was working my electrical business, which I didn't enjoy, for the record, I enjoyed some of it, but for the most part, I didn't enjoy the lifestyle, I didn't enjoy the work that much. So I still found it satisfying knowing that I was building these assets for my children to one day inherit. So for me, it was all about framing.
Yeah, I don't find that selfish at all, wanting to help people. I mean, that's why. I mean, that's honestly the biggest question: is there even a true sense of altruism, right? Doing things just for doing things and helping people, and is and having that need met for yourself, getting that satisfaction knowing that you're making a difference in someone's life.
And don't get me wrong, it's nice if you can get paid along the way. But
No,
you know,
absolutely. Well, again, right? You gotta take
but
care of your
it's a
family.
win-win for everyone. That's what
Yeah.
businesses are all about. I don't think bad example, but I don't think McDonald's would be making hamburgers if they were giving them away, and then they wouldn't last as long.
They might last a day, but maybe not
Yeah.
two.
Yes.
No, that's a good point. And again, there's nothing wrong. I mean, you've read thousands of financial books, and a lot of them, from my point of view, you can also, I would also be more interested in what you have to say about what have you saw like the financial books say about like earning money and making money for your families. What have you noticed about that?
What I find interesting about a lot of the finance space actually is that they take a very personal, I mean, it's personal finance. All of the books I've read on the finance side, personal finance. So they take a very one-sided approach. A lot of them have been on, and again, it's like what you consume. They say you're the part of the five people you spend the most time with, but part of that is the kind of content you consume. So if you're always reading personal finance books talking about early retirement, well, guess what happens? You think you want to retire early, but when you actually experience it through your own, subjective experience, you might not enjoy it so much. But in terms of like the finance books that I have read, a lot of the time they do take that personal approach, and it is very, me centered. And what I would say to that is, if you can just take the me element out of it and think about everything in the collective of your family, it makes a big difference. So and if you look at it from the perspective, I mean, we have people here, we call them your people on welfare. I think you guys call it social security.
Yeah, but we
They
still
don't
call it welfare.
necessarily. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, but there you go. I'll learn something today. the it typically it kind of holds people back in a sense, and you can see that with universal basic income as well, where it's been tried. They try to finagle the numbers as much as possible, but people don't view it as they don't suddenly become artists, as as often preached to us. So the angle I kind of take with the finance side is that the money that you make, and the reason it's the lowest on the forms of capital, and we could break all four down if you like, but the reason it's the lowest on the totem pole there is because it's the least important. Anyone who focuses on money first is ultimately going to put their family in a worse position, because you want to be preparing your kids for the money, not the money for your kids. The money is just a byproduct of the other three, ultimately. So if you are focused primarily on money, then you'll wind up like what happened with the Vanderbilts. And yeah, they're still wealthy. Don't get me wrong, they're still very
Yeah.
wealthy. But the whole world would be completely different. Potentially, the Vanderbilts would have run America. I mean, you might argue they do, but let's not get into that. The wealth and the fortune that they had wasn't actually grown between generations eternally. It was actually a big schism in their family once Cornelius died, because he was actually a terrible father. And if he was a better father and he didn't beat his kids and play favorites and really have this divide and focus on money primarily, then his family would be a lot stronger, and the world would actually be a very different place now. How different, for the better or worse, I'm not going to say, but it would just be, it's an example of how you can have a negative outcome with all the money in the world. He was, richest man by a long shot, but unfortunately for his family, at least, maybe fortunately for us, they weren't able to continue that. Like his son grew, his oldest son, one of his oldest, I forget now, William was his name. I forget if it was his oldest or not, but it wasn't his favorite. But he managed to grow the fortune, kind of riding on the coattails of what his dad built. But from there, it just got divided and eventually shrunk down. And there's still Vanderbilts that are prominent, and that's thanks to their social capital and being able to build on the small inheritance that they did have. But in terms of like the big, giant collective Vanderbilt wealth, gone. And that's because they focus on money first. So in terms of like the finance thing, it is important to understand finance and how to build wealth and the strategies around that, especially around a family. We can also touch on that, just ask away. But for your family, you should put that on the lowest priority. It's obviously important to a man, probably top five things. Money's in there, but it's in terms of your family. If you focus primarily on money, you're going to wind up with the same thing happening. You're going to get a schism. You're going to get a fracturing of your family, and it's only going to wind up being a net negative.
That's such a good point that you made. I like that you made the distinction. You prepare your kids for the money, not your money for the kids. Because the first, and I don't know what they call it in New Zealand, but we call sometimes those kids trust fund kids.
Hmm.
Kids who didn't, because they had a wealthy parent, something happened, and all of a sudden you're 18 and you get, let's say, this big check. Or you get kids who are 18 and all of a sudden go into, whether it be, let's say, the NBA. And now they got 18-year-olds making millions of dollars, yet they're spending their, who are they spending their time with?
Exactly. Well, the thing is it's really about in terms of your family fund, family finances. I like to call it a family treasury. It's there to improve the lives, not the lifestyles of your kids. And so, handing out a stipend to your kids is really dangerous. It can actually lead to laziness. It can lead to people taking advantage, or family members taking advantage of it, and also it can lead to negative reputation management. So, if you're focusing on the money first, it winds up being a net detriment to the other three forms of capital. So that's really why you've got to kind of keep it on the lower tier. And there's a few different ways you can build it, but in terms of its use, only for the lives, not for the lifestyles. I've seen people do larger families, wealthier families do income matching. So if you earn under a certain amount, you get income matched up to that value. So it might be you earn 100,000, the family will income match you dollar for dollar up to 100,000, and then anything beyond that you keep, and the family will only pay you up to the 100,000. And I've seen other families where they will buy the homes for their family. So instead of every individual going and buying a house, the family will buy that home, and then the family member will rent that home back off the family. And so that way, instead of money going being an outflow and going to a landlord or going to the bank, is going
Mm-hmm.
back into the family instead. So there's like a net positive there. And when they rent it off the family, they're paying less than they would for a mortgage, and they're paying less than they would for rent. So there's that added benefit of it growing the family treasury, and also they get to live in a nicer house than if they were renting. So it's like a net benefit. So there's a lot of ways you can use a family fund to benefit your family as a whole. But if you're making it there purely just to improve the lifestyle of your families or your family members, it's only going to end badly.
Yeah. No, that's a really good distinction. And I know in some families here that they do that. They would buy, like, they will still be together because of the culture. They would stick together and then they'll buy nice places and then rent it out. It's not really, I don't know how, it's not that common.
No, it's not
I
that,
do know
especially in
a
the
few
West, not that
people.
common.
Yeah. So, I like that. I've always liked that idea of, people living together. I remember, I'm sure you can probably relate to this. I remember growing up on where I grew up, and the whole family basically lived on that street.
That's cool, man.
So, like, the mom, the sister, the grandparents, and then, basically everybody. And obviously that's not as common anymore. And so it seems like you're really taking that step to kind of bring that back, really being like focused in on how can we take families and put them back together, whether that's buying a nice house and then renting it out to each other. So that way, instead of money going to a landlord, it's going to a family member, and hopefully that family member's trustworthy. So that way, repairs are being made and things like that. Because that's another kind of the flip side you hear about is don't mix family and business because sometimes it doesn't go well.
Hang on a second now. All right. So if you
See,
got to look at
that's
the
why I said because
biggest,
I want to know your thoughts on that one.
you get me all fired up here. If you got to look at some of
Yeah,
the
it's
biggest
purpose on it,
companies
man.
in the world, right, like L'Oreal, Walmart, I think even Nike to a degree. I'm just drawing a blank on them now, but you can actually go. There's a list of them. You can just type it into Google. There's a list of them. Some of the biggest brands in the world have been built, bought, or run by families, and they still are to this day. So when they say business and family don't mix, what they mean is business and your family don't mix. But business and family mix very, very well, actually. It's just a matter of, again, the four capitals: human, intellectual, social, financial. Focus on the human first, and everything else follows. So, again, businesses fall into the money category. If you aren't focusing on the human capital first, then the business or the money doesn't work out. So you focus on the human element first, build strong connection with your kids, make sure you know how to work together, make sure you know how to resolve conflicts, and then business and family mix. So, so yes, I have a very big problem with that saying. It bugs the heck out of me. But yes, business and family do mix. They do. It's just a matter of making sure that you focus on the right things. You can't, neglect your children their whole life and then suddenly think that you're going to run a cab company or something together. It's just not going to work out. So focus on the family first, and then everything else will follow.
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad you said that. I had that statement because that's a very common saying over here is you don't mix family
Same here, yeah.
businesses and it happens. Or if you work at a place, be careful if you hire family members because it's not always the easiest. And at times, again, it can work very well. And other times it depends, right? But, and now I haven't read any books that talk about how do you build a business and include your family. I don't know if you have, because I know it seems you're pretty well read between reading, thousands of financial books, it sounds like, and quite a few parenting and, relationship books.
Well, full transparency, I haven't read thousands of books, all right? It's a little
Okay.
bit, you've been at zero on there, but hundreds maybe. But I have done to read thousands of books, man. But like in terms of making sure that your family and the business mix, what I find is you hear it a lot with money being a taboo subject. Money isn't a taboo subject for a dynastic family. You talk about it often, even if it's not necessarily in the, you might be struggling at the moment, there might be difficulties that you're facing. Just be transparent with your kids. They might not, I mean, you don't want to be stressing them out, don't get me wrong, but being transparent with them, helping them understand that, and giving them an ownership mentality is super important. Like with our kids, we have an e-commerce store that we run. My kids help out on that. My kids have done their own business ventures. We've done door-to-door chocolate selling. They've raised chickens and sold them. They have a small e-commerce store of their own. So we're helping them develop that
Wow.
entrepreneurial mindset where they come in and operate with the family. And I always say our businesses are the family businesses. And when they help out, they're helping in the family businesses. They're not helping me, they're helping the family. And the same goes for everything that we're doing. The house that we own, the house and property that we own, I always say it's ours. It's not mine. It's not my wife's. It's ours. It's the family's. And as a result, they take on that ownership mentality. They want to help out. I post pictures all the time on X about them helping out on the property and planting trees and fixing that. We put a new water pump in here and a filtration system. And my son's helped with that. So it's just about giving them that sense of ownership. um, as they grow and mature and develop, that just really evolves with them. So it goes from them, doing small things like making, coloring in a box and putting some chocolates, but they've, take their birthday money and put it in a box, and we go and knock on doors in a very awkward fashion, to eventually them stepping in and helping out with other things, or maybe they want to start something of their own. It just depends on the tactics that you want to take for your family. One thing that I do recommend that every man does is they take that mentality that they are in business, whether you have the desire for something entrepreneurial or not. You might not want to, like I said, run a cab company or even write online or whatever it is. But if you take that mentality of being a business owner and treat your investments like they are the business of your family, then you have they have a lot more, there's a lot more reverence around them. So you're much more willing to make the sacrifices to grow that. You're much more willing to talk to your kids about it and show them the progress and involve them in the decision making. Even if they're 5, they're still interested in what it is that you're working on and what it is that you're building for them. It's just a matter of the way that you talk about it and your excitement levels around it as well. If you're always going around and being negative about your finances and negative about your investments, they're going to adopt that. But if you're positive and you say, we own these and this is what we're working on, this is what we're building as a family, they're going to be hyped. Like my kids don't talk about what they want to do when they grow up. They talk about what they want to own when they grow up. They don't say, I want to be an astronaut. They want to build the rocket ships, So that's they want to own the rocket ships more like, and lots of them. But yeah, it's about the way that you talk to them and the way that you involve them in that. So if you want, to get your kids involved in the family business, act like they own it now and talk about it like that and talk about positively about it. And maybe one day you might just have investments. You might just have, a dividend portfolio that you've built and, over the course of 10 years and it throws off. I can't do the math in my head, but let's say $10,000 in dividends. Your son might want to start a lawn mowing business. So you take a portion of those dividends and you buy the equipment so he can start it. And then instead of him, and he might be good at it. And if he's good at it, then you can take some of those funds and help him buy it. And the family has a stake in that business. So now he's going out, he's building up this lawn care business, and a portion of those earnings are going back into the family treasury, giving you a better return than you would on the dividends. So there's a lot of different ways you can approach it, but it's about just having that positive spin on it and making sure your children are taking that ownership mentality so they can begin to move up that ladder in terms of the kind of assets you're able to put underneath your family.
Wow, that's incredible. I really love that change in mindset because now is that a common mindset that a lot of people in New Zealand have?
No, I wouldn't say it's a strict no. We have one of the highest percentages of business ownership in the West, but that comes with the caveat is that we have very strict employment laws. So what we do is we have a lot of tradesmen have their own businesses and then they subcontract. So that counts as a business, and that's like a way to skirt around the laws. But yeah, in terms of like the general mindset of people sticking together and building this wealth of generations, very uncommon. And it's very uncommon in the West. We see it a lot more in other cultures, but Western cultures, it's something that something we've lost somewhere along the way.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because I know a lot of the mindset sometimes around here. This is my house. I pay the bills and pay the lights on. I put food in your belly. I put a roof over your head, and if you're gonna live under my roof, it's gonna be by my rules and different things like that. Where a lot of that creativity and connection, that owner piece is kind of lost. Like, okay, if it's your house and you can clean, why would I have to clean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't heard that one before, but yes, I think so. Well, in terms of that, like the way I look at our family property is it's not just a home; it's a compound. So I look at our family property as it's something that we're going to build and develop to suit our family. And you can do this with just about any kind of property. Ideally with a rural property, like what we've done, because it gives you space to spread out, it gives you a lot of options. Your son wants to start a firewood business; he doesn't have to go and rent any land. You have the land. Your son wants to start an e-commerce store, he can buy a shipping container instead of having to pay the amount for a shipping container every couple of months just to rent some space. So it gives you a lot of versatility. But you can do it with a suburban home if you want. You could even theoretically do it with an apartment. I don't recommend it because there's just so many other complications that come along with that. But Trump did that for a long time with his apartment in the Trump
Mm-hmm.
Tower. Probably not the best example, because he's incredibly wealthy. But he did that until he moved to Mar-a-Lago later. So there's like a lot of different ways that you can do that in order to build you and establish a family compound. And if you have a house now, just treat it like it's your family compound. Develop it to suit your family. It depends on where you are at life and what you want out of life as well. For us, I've always wanted to live in the country, wanted to give my kids room to play, and also eventually they'll be able to put their own starter homes on here. Not necessarily their final forever homes, but it'll give them a place to live that isn't necessarily under our roof. That gives them their own space to develop and work on while they stay at home and build a bit of wealth. And on that topic, it's one of the best things that you can do for your kids, regardless of your position, is just let them stay at home a little bit longer. We all know now it's like harder and harder to get your first home and get on the property ladder. So instead of kicking your kids out and making that money, again, net outflow into other people's pockets, they can stay at home and stack a bit of cash. And part of that comes from, and that I hear, you can hear the boomers, oh, they got to go on their own independence and all this, but all that comes from the journey to becoming an adult. If you are giving them responsibility, if you're teaching them what it is to be an adult, if you're giving them more chores to do, if you're helping initiate them through stages of their life with rites of passage, you will see them step up and take more responsibility. So instead of looking at it like I've got to kick them out at 18, it's how can I help them in the next stage of their life? So it
I
might
like that.
be that you and again, I do think one area I think the boom's got it right in terms of like the your kids becoming adults is there are no free rides. So it's a great opportunity if your kids are older and you haven't done it yet to start your family treasury or at least start building it up a bit more. So when your kids go out and they have a job or something like that, they can pay you a portion of the rent. And instead of you saying, I'm going to pocket this, I'm going to go and have steak and wine dinners or whatever, right? You take that, you take some use for the cost of living because it's not getting any cheaper, but also you take the balance and you put it into your family treasury so then that can grow a bit faster. And that, again, can be used to improve the lives of your family. And also the other benefit, just while I'm on this topic, is that it can prevent them from making life choices that can alter the course of your family forever. We see kids like 18 getting forced into or feeling forced into going to college and taking out these huge debts. We can lock them out of having a family till they're like 40, man. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's an insane thing to do to your kids. So if there's anything that you take away from this, let your kids live at home longer. It's not, you've been doing it for 18 years. What's another couple more? It's going to set them up and help build that generational wealth from your generation to the next. And all wealth's generational. Don't get me wrong. Like this might not be the move that makes you into billionaires, but all wealth's generational. And if you can make your kids better off than you are, that's generational wealth. That's a massive win. And it's
Exactly.
so simple. It's so easy when you just let them stay at home just a little bit longer, or just put a little bit of money away into a family treasury. It might even be that they want to go to college, and instead of taking out this big fat student loan, they can borrow it off the family. And they, again, should no free rides, should be a little bit of interest on it, but it's not going to lock them down this path where they're stuck and trapped, trying to service this debt that they've taken out for a career they probably hate. I think about 80% of people don't like their jobs. So they get stuck in this career that they hate, and they think I can't have kids. Oh no, I can't have a stay-at-home wife, and all this other stuff, which is really will help build your familial strength. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm rambling now, but a lot of
No,
takeaways
no,
there.
no. I love everything that you're saying because I know a lot of people are being forced to go to college, and I'm all for if someone wants to stay at home and go to college because if you think about the food that's at college, it's not the best. It's a lot of ultra high processed foods. Not the best room conditions, right? When everyone
No,
have to buy
no.
a fan and sometimes sleep with the fan like almost like a pillow. And one of the things though is find something that you can enjoy because I knew plenty of people that I knew someone personally who was on track to be a teacher. And I remember this person got to the internship and said, I don't want to be a teacher.
Yikes.
So we're talking about a few years into school, taking the classes, passing the classes, get to the school internship, and they're like, yeah, this isn't for me. And then have to go through all those like emotions, right? Of trying to figure out what they want to do. So I'm all for like, stay at home, build up capital. Again, like you said, not like you're buying steak and lobster dinners every single weekend. It's meant to, take care of the family. It's making sure that there's that reserve so that way you have that money for a down payment on a nice house and maybe a little bit more so we get the low interest rates as you can. Because right now, I don't know if they are in New Zealand, but we're hitting still like mid like 6.5 to like 7%
About that here, yeah.
like interest rates.
Yeah. No, I feel it. And well, the other thing
And
is like,
houses
and
are
also, oh yeah, don't get me. Well, I'm
don't,
unfortunately
don't
rent
get you
free.
started
I'm
on
immune
okay.
from that on a yeah, on a personal level. I'm immune from that. I still got a rental property that I have mortgage on, which I hope they come down soon. Because we don't get 30-year fixed here, by the way. We get we can lock for the longest period of 5 years. So you kind of got to like figure out the timing, otherwise the bank can kind of rug pull you if you can't service it after a certain point. So a bit tricky there. But just on the topic of your
So you
kids
have
staying
like
at home,
five
we can
years to pay off a
also
house?
no. You lock it in for 5 years, so you have it
Oh,
paid over a 30-year
we lock it
period.
in for 5 years.
You
Okay,
lock the interest rate in for 5 years, or 6 months to 5 years. So you get
I
all
see.
variable if you're that if you're that crazy. But yeah, so
Oh, gee.
it's a bit tricky to time it. So yeah, that's I just hope they come down soon. But the just back on the topic of keeping kids at home, the other benefit is that you share the workload, and that comes down to the whole building human capital, freeing up time. Is that you're sharing this workload? So like with us, we've got a big property here, and right now is I'm trying to set it up to be as manageable as possible because I do a lot of the work on it. But eventually, as the systems grow and as it develops, and we put in more garden beds, we get more livestock. There's going to be more work involved. And as my
Oh
sons
yeah.
get older, they're going to be more involved in it. Obviously, my daughter as well, but my son's boys typically stronger, so they're going to be able to help more with the fencing stuff and stuff like that. Which means that it's going to be less work on me, which frees up my time to work on the businesses to help out with other things. So it's really about putting that investment up front into your kids to help them understand that they're part of something, and then when they do, when they become adults, they understand that they're part of the family and they contribute. And on that topic, I find that allowance actually undermines your authority as a parent as well. So I typically stay away from allowance because I think
Okay.
it can be a good opportunity to teach kids about finance. I'm not saying it's all bad, but in terms of getting them to genuinely contribute and feel the need to contribute, allowance undermines that. So instead, what I do is I give my children opportunities to work in the businesses that we own, and they can earn money doing that. So, for example, when they pack a parcel in our e-commerce store, they get a little shiny plastic gold coin, not a real gold coin. It's not that profitable. But they get a shiny plastic gold coin, and when they get 20 of those, they can swap them for $20. And what they'll
Well,
often do with that is they'll bake them up for a while, and then they have their own little investment portfolio, so they'll put money into that, and they like to see that grow and like to understand they own certain things in it. So like if there's a plane that goes overhead and it has a black tail, that's Air New Zealand, and they have some shares in that. So that every time they hear a plane, they run outside and they go and have a look. And if it's got a black tail, they're like hugging each other and jumping up and down, saying, "Oh, we're making money, we're making money." But it's they're making fractions of cents, on the dividends.
yeah.
But it's cool
But
to
to
see
them,
it.
it's
It's cool to
like,
encourage that
hey,
thought.
I'm helping you stay afloat, and that's
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. They and they love it, and it's cool to see that sense of ownership in them as well. So yeah, in terms of like allowance, I typically stay away from that. And I would if I was anybody out there trying to build a dynastic family, because it will undermine your authority and that sense of genuine belonging and contribution, and swaps it out for almost like the worship of money instead. So like I don't know the last time you ever got paid for sweep, unless you had a cleaning business. I don't know, but I've never been paid to sweep up or like clean up my shed or anything like that. In fact, it costs me money. It costs me time. So it's like it's actually they should be
Yeah.
paying me to do the chores if you really think about it.
Yeah, I think when I was a kid, I think I got paid like one or two times, wasn't often. Then it's like, no, you're part of the family, gonna help out. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. It's just being part of the family and
Yeah,
just
so
doing what needs to be
you're
done.
part of the family. Why should I have to pay you? This, if you want to eventually have a house, you have to learn how to clean, right? And that sometimes might be
Exactly.
cleaning and re-cleaning because you might miss spots in here and there. And it's all about, I like really talking about taking ownership and part. This is part of our house, and we need to take care of it. And if I'm going to give you an allowance soon, we kind of naturally need to do anyways. That undermines you and taking that ownership. Plus, you can be a little bit more grumbly if you don't have maybe the cash rate on you at that time. You have to go to the bank or something. It's like, what are you doing? I want the money now. Because everything that you're talking about, the one book that always comes to my mind is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert
Hmm.
Kiyosaki. I'm
A
sure you've read
classic.
that
A
book.
classic. I have.
Yeah.
I've actually read it multiple times. I can. I think it's got a really good vibe to it. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily agree with Kiyosaki and his methods, and but the woman who wrote it for him is very good, and she's got a great vibe. So so I really enjoyed the book actually.
Yeah, because I just think about everything you described. I'm sure you can remember like when he was a boy working in his friend's dad's store.
Yeah, yeah.
And he goes like, "Why don't you pay me like other employees? Because you're gonna think like an employee. Because then eventually you're gonna start grumbling about how much you make, and then you're gonna
Hmm.
come to me wanting more money.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna ask you
Yes.
what value are you bringing, and you're gonna say, I don't know. I show up and come to work today. Good. That's what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Why should I pay you extra for
Yeah.
coming to work and doing what you're supposed to be doing? So like everything that you talk about like ownership, because that shaped his whole idea. That's why I call him his rich dad. And so your whole story kind of vibes with that because it's like we're all in this together. If we're gonna build this dynasty, if we're gonna build this land, this enterprise where we're all helping each other, that's not just gonna set up a good relationship between you and your kids. It's gonna be eventually if you have grandkids and great grandkids, and then hopefully it'll go that far where it won't be like the Vanderbilts. Now again, we can't predict the future or anything. It's just that intentionality of making sure things like family and things like that stick together and setting that as the tone of this is what a family is. A family is being together. It's if we have issues, because guess what? Get two people together, there's gonna be issues, and you're by yourself, then you can be arguing with yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm well aware of that.
And so, I'm just really appreciative, like, of you taking time, and I've learned a lot from you, just in how, in terms of that mindset, just to have that R, going back to that R, reducing that kind of pride, that ego of me, and say, what can we do? And that's been like a good theme in a lot of recent literature is like reduce the I, increase the we.
Hmm. Yeah, it actually has been. It's nice to see a shift back towards thinking more collectively. Maybe not in a communistic sense, but in terms of what we can accomplish as a collective of people, and that is no more true than it is for a family. What we can achieve as a family is much more than we can achieve as individuals. We have, if you play your cards right and you set your family up well, you have all the time, and that's left, however you want to cut it. So it gives you a much more power, and not in like the manipulative sense, but in the amount of change that you can make in the world. And you can see that with like churches as individuals, they can. I mean, you could do a lot, but you can only do so much. But when a church comes together for a particular goal, they are able to do so much more and enact so much more change in the world. And that's the same principle that applies to a family. When you come together and you're working towards a goal, you can enact so much more change, whether it's for your family or for other people, for that matter.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, and it's getting back to that. It's reducing, which can also help reduce the isolations because I know a lot of people. There's just I know kind of can be popularized. Now, unfortunately, this is what gets all the views is, well, if your family's toxic, just stop talking to them and leave them. And the
Well,
question
on that
is,
subject, oh, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
no, go for it.
I was going to say on that subject, one thing that is important to keep in mind when it comes to building a dynastic family is that you can't go backward. unfortunately. I wish you could, but you just can't. I've never seen it done in anything that I've researched. It always has to be one man that comes up with that has that mindset shift and he wants to build a dynasty. You can't, if you try to pull your parents into it, it can be done if you've already set everything up and they're old. But if you're my age, I'm 35, so if you're my age and your parents aren't terribly old yet, that it's very hard to try and pull them into that mentality. When they've already gone through 60 plus years of their life,
Hmm.
and that you're trying to change that mentality that built up their whole life. It's just it's might be possible, maybe, but the amount of energy you'll spend on that is just not worthwhile when you should be focusing on your family. And that's not to say cut them off or anything. That's completely unreasonable. But instead of trying to focus on going backward, if you focus more on your children and building up the human capital in that instance, then you're going to have a much better end result. And maybe when you've set that up and your parents and your siblings can see what you've accomplished through that mentality, maybe they want to be part of it. But yeah, really focus on the going forward part rather than trying to go sideways or backwards, because it is a lot of. I've tried it. It is a lot of energy, and yeah, you're really going to battle.
For sure. Well, I mean, that's why we talk about breaking generation curses or being that generational change that your family may have gone one way because that's all they knew and or how they handle it. That's just the current mindset because it is harder to, change your mindset the older you get. You get kind of more, you know, stuck in a way. And
Exactly. Yeah,
unless there's like
exactly.
a
Really do.
gravitational change where it kind of opens your eyes and change because it can happen. It just might take more time than typical, especially if you already have set values and your wife is in agreement to those values, and again, some compromise in between and things like that, but the main values you have ironed out of how you want to raise the kids, how you want to live your dynasty, and things like that. So that way, because it takes a team and it takes a lot of initiative to really make sure that's together. So that way, you're sending consistent communication. So that way the kids don't go, well, if I go to dad, he's gonna say no. If I go to
Yes.
mom, she might say yes. That way they both go. That way the kids might think, if I go to either one of them, they're both gonna tell me either yes or no. It's not gonna be either or.
Yeah. Yes, very true.
No, it's. I hope a lot of people who's watching this video, I hope you get just a lot of good value of what Ben's really teaching and how he's really helping you try to set up the dynasty in your life. That it's not too late. That you can't go back in time. We just can't. We have to accept that we're in the here and now and we can just move forward. We can always change directions. We can always make a different choice, a different pathway. And if that's the one message you got here from Ben, then you're doing great. Because then now it's time to take that action. So Ben, here's your time to shine that you've already been already shining. How would you like to speak to someone today who wants to build a dynasty for their family, who came from a rough area and really wants to move forward in life? What would you speak to them?
Every dynasty has started with one man who has made the decision to alter the course of his family forever. And that man could be you. You just have to make that choice. You just have to make the decision that I am going to be that man. I'm going to do things differently. And it's not that hard. Don't try to bite off too much at once. Just start small. Start with little changes you can make. Focus on your kids. Build that strong relationship. Start taking a little bit of money away. Build that family treasury. Put some dynastic infrastructure in place. It might be you start working on your family constitution. It might be that you design a family emblem. It might be that you just choose a family color. I highly recommend doing that. It's quite a fun thing to do. Just find something that is a piece of infrastructure that's a mindset shift that will affect your family forever, and start implementing it. Be open with your kids. Talk about what you want to build with them, that you're going to work together in the future. Support them. Let them live at home. Build a strong relationship. Help them become competent adults. Put rites of passage in place. I'm making a list here, but just pick one thing and start chipping away at it. And once you've got that in place, add something else. You don't have to be Superman. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to have $1 billion fortune. All wealth is generational. Just pick one thing to focus on and start working on it. As long as you're always prioritizing that human capital, or as always you're prioritizing the connection with your kids and making sure you have a strong family bond, then everything else kind of follows from that. And that would be like the best thing I think that we can do as men, as patriarchs of our family, for the next generation. If we all just had this mindset that we're going to create generational wealth in its many forms, not necessarily creating $1 billion fortune, but helping children become, or helping our families become stronger through our children, then the world will eventually become a better place and much stronger, much more resilient. So that would be my best advice I can give to somebody: just start small. And if you want help with that, you could follow me on X. I'm doing YouTube videos as well. So if you want help with that, just reach out to me anytime. I'm always game to talk shop. So, so yeah, that would be my advice. Just start and take that ownership mentality, take that first patriarch mentality. It just makes such a difference when you start thinking like that.
Well, here you heard it from Ben. Now, I'm going to highly encourage you to go follow Ben on X, YouTube. All his socials will be in the description below. And so, as part of our call to action, because in this academy, we're life learners, we're scholars. And to be a scholar, we have to learn. And the best way to learn is through life and going out there and trying. So, you just heard him give his 1 minute speech about starting. So, make a plan and get going. That's going to be this call of action. If you want to build your dynasty, if you want to build your family to have a better life for generations to come, then start writing out a plan. Start having an emblem, a color, a symbol saying today is going to be a new day. Today is where we're going to start and not stop. There's going to be hiccups. There's going to be mistakes. We're going to learn from it, move forward, and always have that symbol keeping us forward. So, and if you need help with that, also, we have the Men's Lifeline Academy Discord group that meets Monday, 7 p.m. EST. If you're interested in that, send me a DM and we'll have a conversation about it. And if you got value out of this video, remember to like, share, comment. And I want you to comment, though, if you're going to do that call of action. Say, I'm in that call of action, and I'm going to have an emblem. I'm going to do something for my family today. So, Ben, thank you so much, my friend, for coming on the podcast. And it's so good to finally meet you. And I just look forward to seeing more content from you moving forward.
I appreciate having me on, Zach. Really, really good conversation, and thanks for letting me go off the handle sometimes. I get really passionate about talking about this stuff, so I'm always game to talk shop.
Well, I love seeing passion. I love seeing drive, and I love saying, oh, hold on a second, just like earlier we had about don't mix family business. Not say I'm doing that, and I'm doing it well. So I always love hearing that, and I hope everyone has a blessed day.